Hello, my name's Niall Beard and I'm doing a presentation today on the Biodiversity Catalogue and a new feature that has been developed by a third year student here at the University of Manchester called Vale, who has created support for web map services in the catalogue. This is me. I'm a developer. I'm no longer working on the BioVal project, which used to be funding the Biodiversity Catalogue, but I still do maintain it and keep it ticking over nonetheless. So here's the URL for the Biodiversity Catalogue. Feel free to register for an account on there and make any annotations you want or register any services. So this presentation today will basically just be what web services are, very briefly, a bit of a look at the Biodiversity Catalogue, and finally what web map services are and how we've implemented support for them. So web services, very simply, are you send data and parameters to a server. The server does something, so it either computes a value, looks things up from a database, or draws together other resources, and then it returns a value or a map. For example, here's a visualization from the BioStiff server, or a value from a database. So there's two main types of sort of generic web service technology. There's SOAP and REST. So SOAP provides a contracts document called a WSDL, which specifies all of the operations available, how to interact with them, the data types of parameters needed to invoke a method, and data types expected to be returned. It's also got metadata descriptions as well incorporated in it, as well as other things. It's a very, very explicit document that is difficult-ish to generate. Any updates to the web service, you'd need to release a new web service document. So it's not a particularly flexible web service type. The way it's supported in the Biodiversity Catalogue is you simply pop the WSDL into the Biodiversity Catalogue. It will then parse it, and all of the functions that it supports will then be displayed in a human-readable way, ready for annotation. REST is a bit more of an ad hoc kind of structure than SOAP. To create one, you basically have a URL called an endpoint, and each of these endpoints does a different operation. It's a lot easier for developers to construct REST web services than SOAP, but it requires writing good documentation. Each provider of a REST service usually writes their documentation differently, which can be quite difficult, which is something the Biodiversity Catalogue seeks to overcome. There are standards and tools for describing REST services, such as Swagger and Waddle. How and whether we should support these and promote their use is another topic of conversation, I think. So I'm going to briefly show you the Biodiversity Catalogue now. I'll first show you a REST service. So this is the most recently added REST service, BioNet web service. You can see here that there's lots and lots of different annotations about the web service. I think that there's three real categories here of web service. There's one which is for developers, so there's things like a description. And when we actually look into a web service, you'll see there's also examples and templates. And this is for the technical person to understand how to actually use it. Then there's kind of the administrative kind of metadata, things like cost, licenses, conditions, things not specifically to how to use it, but how you're allowed to use it. And then finally there's annotations about science, so things like publications, citations, how to cite, the kind of thing that's important as academics to be able to list. So having a look inside this web service, you can see that there's two methods. You can see that there's templates, description, example endpoints, documentation URLs, and input and output types. So all of these can be added. All of these annotations can be added by anyone who registers for an account or by one of our curating staff. We're going to look now into a SOAP service. So this is the Open Modeler web service. which is the most recent web service to be added. So here you can see it's got quite a rich description. Different people have added annotations. You can see one of them is Alex Hardesty, one of the curators. One of the descriptions has come straight from that WSDL document that I was mentioning earlier. And then if we have a look inside the SOAP operations tab, you can see that all of the operations have been automatically extracted from the web service document. So inside each one there's things like the protocol, location, descriptions, the input type, computational type of the input, and the computational type of the output. All once again can be added by anyone. And then back to the main index page, you can see there's different ways for searching for web services. So you have the tag cloud at the top that you can filter by. There's filters down the left hand side with a controlled vocabulary of different biodiversity terms that you can select. And then in the central part you can also use the search bar as well, which is just a solo search. So that's a whistle-top tour of the Biodiversity Catalogue. You can see some of the features. It's very easy to register. You get to expose your web services to the biodiversity community. Annotations are done by other people. You're no longer kind of constrained to doing it and upkeeping it yourself. Now, if a project finishes, the web service still exists, but there's no one around to update your documentation. This is very good because our curators will help to keep things up to date. It's very good for exploring as a web service consumer. You can filter and search. And finally, we have monitoring, which every single day we check that a web service is still available. Web services are notoriously volatile. It's not like having a script on your computer that you can run whenever you want. It's only runnable if it's up, and you don't want to spend time making a workflow or a script that uses a web service that turns out to be quite flaky and breaks quite often. So we check every single day, and then we make a graph for each web service to show how stable it is. Okay, so that's basically the Biodiversity Catalogue, and now onto the feature. So Web Map Services. Web Map Services is the standard for displaying or interfacing with servers that host maps and geographic information systems. Geographic information system is designed to capture, store, manipulate, analyze, manage, and present all types of spatial or geographical data. This diagram here, I think, nicely represents what a GIS is. You can see that there's a city, and it gives you a nice, lots of different layers representing abstracted data about that subset of map. We'll see shortly how WMS specifies a way for clients to interface with a map server. So implementations of the WMS standard must provide at least 2 methods, and optionally 5 others. Supporting the Biodiversity Catalogue only covers the 2 compulsory methods: get capabilities to discover the various options, configurations, and parameters that you can use, and get map, which actually makes the request to the map server and then returns the resulting map. WMS services in the Biodiversity Catalogue are currently represented as REST services. The WMS methods get capabilities and get map are added as REST endpoints. There are examples of this as LifeWatch and Ocean Biogeographic Information System, OBIS. So I'm going to now show you a local instance on my machine of the work that Vale has done for supporting WMS services in the Biodiversity Catalogue. All you do is click register a service, and much like adding a REST service or a SOAP service, you are given the WMS option. You add the base URL, which is a parameter-free URL, and add the version of the WMS standard that this implements. You can then fill in some human-readable metadata, and then the biodiversity will construct the get capabilities endpoint out of the base URL that you've inputted. It will then retrieve the response from the server, describing the layers and configurations available. as well as any pieces of metadata. It then parses this and stores it as a service ready for annotation. Once you've added the WMS service, you can then click on the WMS Services tab and it will show you some of the metadata that is extracted from the Get Capabilities method. You can see at the bottom there's a grid table which represent all of the different layers available from this web map service. If you click into one of these, we actually get a sort of a template to help clients interface with their web map services. So you can see from this top drop-down box that the list of all potential outputs have been rendered. Select one of those, and you can also select the CRC and the bounding box values. So this defines the window of the map that you wish to retrieve. Once you've done this, you can just pop the URL into your browser, and you'll see the rendered map with the parameters that you've specified. Going back now to the main service tab, you can see that there's this button that says check for updates. When clicked, it will add to a queue a task to check whether or not there's any new capabilities that have been received from the web map service. This allows us to keep up with change from our service providers. This can be run automatically on a nightly basis. So that's basically the WMS features. I think it would be fair to say that this is a prototype and it can't be released until it's properly hardened, which I estimate would be at least 1 month of work. We don't have the funds to do this at the moment. We will maintain the catalogue though. And with that, I'd like to ask if anyone has any questions. Thank you very much for listening.